everybody. Welcome back to another Raincoast Field School at home. You're here again with me, Taylor, and we are so psyched for this week's video. So for the past couple weeks, we have been focusing on the ocean as an ecosystem, and we're so lucky that we get to live right here on the coast and actually get out and experience these things. So rather than focusing on that kind of narrow band of the intertidal that we have over the past couple weeks, this week is going to be all about the subtidal zone. So these different organisms living in this zone are submerged always. This lies underneath the tides. And so this week we are actually going to get into the water and go explore some of those underwater ecosystems. So I hope you enjoy this week. Let's go jump in the field. Street dock today. Why'd you drag me out here in the rain?
Well, Taylor, I thought we could go look at some cool subtidal species.
Huh, so you're saying that there's species living amongst all these boats? I think the water is a little bit too cold and like way too dark to really support life.
Well, that's where you're wrong, Taylor. Cold, dark water means that there's gonna be a lot of life.
Alright, let's check some out.
So I've brought a few different pieces of equipment to help us look underwater today. We've got this viewfinder. It's pretty sweet. You stick it in the water and look through, and it helps get rid of all the glare behind you so you can really see underwater. It's kind of like a snorkel mask, but you don't have to go snorkeling. I also brought this stick, this PVC pipe. I attach my GoPro to the end of it, and then I can film underwater so I can get a good look at all those fishies without getting in the water myself.
Man, there must be some cool things underneath the dock. Let's check it out.
Check out all these feather duster worms. They're a kind of tube worm, and they like to filter feed, so being in a harbor is a good place for them.
Filter feeders, just like our mussels.
Yeah, exactly. So these feather duster worms, when they get scared, they'll actually hide back inside their tubes. That's how they avoid predators.
So a lot of cool things live under these marine docks, hey?
Yeah, it's a great place for them to live because they always get to be close to the surface of the water, so they get lots of sunlight for the algae, and there's lots of runoff and nutrients and things, and they're always underwater, so they don't have to deal with that intertidal stress. And this last piece of equipment is a plankton net. We use it, we drag it through the water, and it catches all the tiny plankton in the little cup at the end, and then we can look at them under the microscope.
Let's try it out.
Fast through the water. The more times I pull it, the more plankton I'm going to catch. Let's take this back to the lab and check it out.
Okay, but before we check out this plankton underneath the microscope, I have a question for you guys. What exactly is plankton?
Well, you know what, Taylor? There's actually so many different types of plankton. Plankton are tiny little organisms that are known as marine drifters, and they really can't swim very well against currents, so they just get carried along by the tide. And there are some plankton that are going to stay plankton their whole entire lives. And then there are some animals that are just plankton when they're first born, and then they grow into bigger creatures in the ocean. Do you guys remember how we talked about kelp and seaweeds being algae and not plants? Well, we would call those macroalgae because they are big. But there can also be microalgae, which are teeny tiny algae. These microalgae are called phytoplankton, and they are the plants of the sea. Do you remember how algae get their energy? They use sunlight to photosynthesize and produce energy. So phytoplankton are likely to hang out near the surface of the ocean. So we've talked about phytoplankton, but then there's also zooplankton. Any idea what zooplankton are? Well, let's look at the word. It looks like zooplankton. And what do you find at the zoo? Animals. So they're little tiny zooplankton that will stay as plankton their whole lives, such as amphipods and copepods. But then there are other zooplankton that are little tiny animals, and their plankton form is just their larval form or their baby form. And then they'll grow into sea urchins or sea stars, crustaceans like crab or snails, or even fish. Plankton are an essential part of the marine food chain. Not only do plankton feed on each other, but they are also food for so many other marine animals, including whales. Some will grow up to be animals like sea stars, jellyfish, octopus, sea urchins, or even barnacles that will then eat plankton again. Plankton can be affected by predation, temperature change, pollution, and nutrient levels. So the abundance of plankton communities can be used to determine the overall health of an ecosystem. Okay guys, now that we know what plankton are, let's check out the plankton that we found and see if we can identify what they are. Whoa, check out this little guy. He is on the move. So I checked out a few different identification sheets and I've narrowed it down to either a shrimp larvae zooplankton or a barnacle larvae zooplankton. So cool that this little dude is going to grow up to be one of these things. But guys, I think I need your help. What do you think? Type in number 1 for shrimp or number 2 for barnacle. Well, let's see. We found one more of what I think is the same animal, but he's not moving so much. Does that help? So we think that he might be a barnacle larvae. And the way that you can tell the difference is that barnacles have little horns on their heads in their larval stage. Otherwise, a lot of these guys look pretty similar. It's so cool that this one is going to grow up to be a barnacle, and then he's going to eat little plankton with his feather feet. Okay, let's check out the next one. Whoa, check out this little guy. He kind of looks like a little shrimp, doesn't he? Well, let's look at some options. So here's a shrimp larvae that we've already seen before, but it doesn't really look right. Then there's an amphipod zooplankton or a crab zooplankton. Oh, you guys, I need help. What do you think? Type in number 1 for shrimp, number 2 for amphipod, or number 3 for crab. Guys, I think this little one is an amphipod. So we are right that he kind of looks like a little shrimp, but actually this guy is a crustacean that is going to stay as a zooplankton his entire life. Okay, last one. We have 2 things here. One might be that barnacle or shrimp larvae that we saw in the first couple pictures, but let's focus on the big guy. He is getting bugged by the little one. So we have some options here, and I need your help. He might be a hermit crab larvae, a krill larvae, or a copepod larvae. What do you guys think? Type in number 1 for hermit crab, number 2 for krill, or 3 for copepod. I think he might be a copepod. So this is another zooplankton that will remain as a plankton for his entire life. So cool. All right, guys, this is amazing that all of these animals are swimming in the water, but they are so tiny. We need a microscope to be able to see them. Thanks for your help, guys. All right, Taylor, back to you.
There's so many different types of habitats underwater in the subtidal. Let's go check out an underwater forest.
Whoa, an underwater forest? Are we gonna see things like spruce trees under there? Man, they would so cone that salt.
Not exactly, Taylor. I'll show you.
All right, let's go do it. All right, guys, I was just kidding. There's definitely not any spruce underwater. However, there's loads and loads and loads of this. Does anyone have any idea what this is? This is a type of algae, and it is called giant kelp. And there's so much of it in our subtidal zone that it actually makes an underwater forest.
This is giant kelp, and it is a brown algae. and it can grow in the subtidal. Because of its color, it's able to absorb the light that actually penetrates deeper into the water. Remember how we said that algae are not plants? They don't have roots? They have a holdfast.
A holdfast? What's that?
It's a complex structure that helps them hold onto the ocean floor. It looks like roots, but really it's just really grabby bits of kelp. So they use their holdfast to grab onto a big rock so they don't get swept away in the current.
Wow, that's pretty smart. So if they hold on to the bottom of the ocean, they must be super long, because I usually see them on the surface.
So attached to the holdfast, we have the stipe, or it's kind of like the stem, and that's what reaches all the way to the surface of the ocean. It can grow really fast. How much do you think this can grow in one day?
It can grow up to a foot a day, and it's growing that fast because it wants to get up to the surface where the most sunlight is. So guys, remember what I'm holding in my hand here is not actually a plant. So even though it has these really long blades that kind of look like leaves, they're not. However, they do kind of do the same thing as a leaf. They are the plant structure, or the algae structure, that helps them photosynthesize. So these blades absorb sunlight to help the algae produce its own food.
Wow, Taylor, that's amazing. But how come they don't sink when they're in the water?
So a really cool thing, probably the coolest thing about these giant kelp, is check out these little float devices they have. So attached to every blade, there's this float. So it's a hollow float and it's full of different gases. So it kind of works like a big giant buoy that holds it up to the surface of the water. So I know a really key important part of a forest that grows here on land is that it's able to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen. Hey Steph, do the forests underwater do the same thing?
Yeah, they do. Through photosynthesis, they take in carbon dioxide and convert it into oxygen, just like a plant forest.
Okay. Steph, I hate to break it to you, but this kind of just looks like the Untitled.
Oh.
I don't see no underwater forest here.
If you look out there, that's where we're gonna go.
We're going way out there?
Yeah.
All right, we better suit up.
Let's go find some cool stuff.
Okay guys, so we've now explored two different kind of ecosystems of the subtidal. Remember, we checked out underneath the dock and then we just went into our kelp forest. How about we think of some similarities and differences between those two different areas?
So they're both vertical. That vertical structure means that, on a dock especially, means that we can have some intertidal species and subtidal species. And those algae growing up higher on the dock can be closer to the surface and closer to the light.
Right on. But remember also that mostly when we make our docks, when humans create a dock, they want to put it in a really calm area because no one wants their boat to get all banged up. So that means that these underwater dock species are in this really calm water.
Right. And by contrast, the kelp forest is in a really high energy zone.
Right.
But that kelp has those holdfasts to stay in place, and it acts like a refuge for all the animals because it can slow that current down and protect against the impact of waves. Do you guys think the same species are going to be on a dock as in the kelp forest? Let's take a look. If you said different, you're right. Both the dock and the kelp forest provide vertical habitat, but there are also some key differences. Do you notice how the kelp blades create lots of layers? Those make great hiding places. It's hard to see fish in among the kelp for this reason, and it's a great place for young fish to try and hide as they grow up. Oh look, a tube snout. This one is pretty small, but it's actually full grown. It is using the kelp as a place to live and easily hide from predators. What about this fish? It's hard to get a good look, but it's definitely a juvenile. Possibly a juvenile rockfish. Check out these rockfish. I found them when I was scuba diving near Victoria. They're hanging out in a kelp forest too. Do you know what all those little fish under the dock are? Those are perch. The reason we didn't see as many perch in the kelp is because they were all hiding. If I had gone snorkeling at the dock, my body in the water would have scared the perch away. Another major difference between the dock and the kelp forest is the invertebrates we see. I found a few snails on the kelp. Remember, snails are grazers and like to eat algae. So a kelp forest is both habitat and food for them. On the dock, we see way less algae because it's dark underneath the dock. The algae can't grow, and therefore there's less grazers to eat the algae. This leaves space for filter feeders, like feather duster tube worms, anemones, mussels, and barnacles. Those filter feeders help clean the water around the dock by filtering out a lot of the plankton and runoff from the land. Thanks, filter feeders. You do a good job of keeping the water clean.
Wonder where my buddy Mark is. I want him to be out here surfing with me.
Yeah, these are some sick waves here, Tay.
You know what? I bet you he's fishing. Let's go check it out. Hey, Mark. Oh, hey, Mark. How's it going?
Oh, hey, Taylor.
What you doing out here on First Street Dock, Mark?
Well, Taylor, just thought I'd get in a little bit of fishing, you know? Boat's in the shop, but that ain't gonna stop me.
Mark, are you even allowed to fish down here?
You know what? It's just for the video.
That's right, that's right. So Mark, this week we've been all about the subtidal ecosystems. And
I'm gonna stop you right there. The subtidal ecosystem is my favorite. It's the best. It's where all the action is.
what kind of action are we talking here, Mark?
Non-stop ecological action. The best kind. You know, you come down to the edge of the water here, whether it's the beach or the dock, you're kind of as far as you can go on land, but it just begins as far as this oceanic ecosystem. Water covers more than 70% of the world's surface, and when you think about it, everything from the Arctic Ocean to the Great Lakes, it's all connected, and it collectively forms this massive, massive, massive habitat. And there are all kinds of different niches. You've got warm water, cold water, deep water, shallow water. We've already talked a lot about the marine habitats close to shore, in the intertidal zone, in the littoral zone. But when you really stop and think about it in terms of area and volume, it's those offshore pelagic waters, those subtidal waters, and those offshore waters that are just this huge, vast habitat filled with some of the most amazing creatures.
All right, Mark, so word around town is you're a pretty darn good fisherman.
You better believe it, baby.
But actually, Mark, what do you normally catch out here?
Well, you know, the cool thing about fishing out here is there are a lot of different species. So if you're talking about, you know, catching food for the table, like as a recreational fisherman, you know, you can start off even quite easily with crabs and maybe prawns and stuff like that. There's good clamming. You can harvest all sorts of bivalves. But in terms of actually fishing, lots of people get excited about salmon, halibut, lingcod. So these are fish that are fairly abundant in our waters. They're fairly easy to catch. They're delicious. They're healthy, they're nutritious, and as long as you're making sure to follow all the regulations, you can be part of a sustainable fishery and you can bring home some food that's healthy for you and your family. And that's one of the real blessings of living in a place like this.
So is that what you're going for today, Mark? A nice big halibut right off this dock?
Well, so here's the thing, Taylor. The more you get into fishing, the more you learn about fish and their ecology and their habitats. So it would be quite a thing to catch a halibut off this dock. Different fish like different places in the ocean. Halibut, they're bottom fish. They like sandy banks and stuff like that. So usually the best halibut fishing is it's quite a bit offshore. On the other hand, you can catch other stuff in these inlets and these sheltered waters close to shore that you can't catch offshore. So that's part of the reason that I really like fishing, is it gives you a real insight into the ecology of the habitat that you're fishing in, and you learn a lot about the different animals, the different fish, what they like, where they like to be, when they like to be there. It's easy to look out at the ocean and think, boy, that's just a lot of water. Under the surface, there's a lot going on.
So Mark, can anybody just jump on a boat and go catch some fish?
You don't even need to have a boat to fish. The important thing is you need to have a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of preparation. The things that you should really keep in mind is you want to be safe around the water, and you also want to make sure that you're fishing responsibly. Get a fishing license, make sure that you've read up on the regulations, closures in your area, and honestly, just think about what you need. Take what you need, leave what you don't. One of the things that I am really enjoying about fishing these days is taking my kids out there. And I like to think that when they take their kids out there, they can share the same experiences that I'm getting to share with my kids. So it's all about thinking sustainably. I'm a real pro fishing guy, but I'm a pro sustainability guy. So just be responsible, be respectful, have fun, and keep your eyes open. Because when you're out on the water, you don't know what you're gonna see, but it's probably gonna be awesome.
Wow, Mark, thanks for that great lesson. We'll see you around town.
Whoa. Yeah, right on, Taylor. We'll catch you later.
Hey, Mark. All right, you guys, that was our subtitle episode for you. Hope you enjoyed it. It was a blast getting out in the water, and so cool that Steph was able to get underneath and really check out those kelp forests, as well as the underdock ecosystems. So I do have a little bit of news to drop on everybody. This is our very last at-home video for this kind of period in time for now. We are switching gears and we're jumping into all of our summer programming because we've been given the thumbs up to go forward. So that means we get to start planning all of our Raincoast camps and all of our interpretive walks around both Tofino and Ucluelet. So with that said, we do, however, have one last video that will come out on Tuesday. However, we will not be airing it on Zoom. It's only going to be posted onto our Facebook. And this is kind of going to be a little bit of a wrap up to the at-home segment as well, kind of show you what Raincoast is planning on doing for this summer. So I hope you guys still are able to check out our video on Tuesday that we post. It's going to be a little bit shorter than normal. But again, I just want to thank everybody so much for always jumping in and tuning in and yeah, watching it. I had such a fun time making every single video, and I hope you learned as much as I did and really enjoyed yourself as well. With that said, take care, have an amazing summer, and hopefully we'll see you back here in the fall.